Josh Raven here with the Daily Dot, joined by YNK, or more commonly known as Janko, from the analysis desk at DreamHack Malmö. And we've just finished the end of the quarterfinals. We've just seen NIP beat Virtus.pro in a pretty close series. So we'll start off with that game as you've just kind of watched it happen. Were you expecting that kind of result? Obviously VP known for kind of being good at events and not so good online, but NIP kind of took it.
I was expecting NIP to win in the end. I did think that VP would manage to win Train though. I mean, it's tricky. NIP isn't as weak on it as some people might think, and they're just playing so fundamentally good Counter-Strike all around that it's actually really hard to bet against them. And the match itself was really interesting because it showed how both teams, it was actually a game of T-sides. Both teams had strong T-sides, and in the end NIP just managed to get enough on their CT side to scrape a win in 2 maps.
And do you think this improvement of play from NIP has come from within themselves or from Threat? Because obviously a lot of people are talking about Threat and how much he's improved them.
Yeah, I think Threat is the main reason, and the improvement from themselves came from Threat, in a sense that the things he implemented really improved their game. And obviously they started playing better, so that also gave them confidence once they realized, okay, so this is really working, you know, things are going good. They started winning again, I mean, which is obviously makes you feel much better. So it is Threat, and then also them regaining confidence individually.
And do you think we've somewhat been kind of sleeping on a pretty good fragger? Because since Threat's kind of taken over as the in-game leader or whatever it is for NIP, Exist has just been top fragging pretty much every game. I mean, was that something that you saw coming when Threat took over?
I mean, not really. I'm not sure about like every game. Exist has always been the guy who sometimes just goes off randomly in some games. Sometimes he's a bit quiet, but most of the time he's like consistently solid, so to speak. But yes, in this particular matchup, especially on the CT side of Cash, where they needed a bit of a push from their players individually, he performed super well. Get right as well. But that's the interesting thing for me when it comes to NIP. In all of the games they win, at least most of the time, as far as I can tell, it's never one player just having a 30-plus frag game or something like that. It's mostly everyone doing their part. And yes, in some rounds maybe Getright has a crazy round, or Forest has a good round with the op, or Exist and so on. But it's basically the whole team doing work.
Okay. And tomorrow they'll be going off against the other Swedes still left in the tournament, Godsent. Pretty surprising that they've made it this far, really, when you look at how they are coming in. Do you see any chance really for Godsent to take that? I mean, they've been doing pretty well.
I mean, there is always a chance. The problem is that I believe that it's very slim. It's also the fact that, I don't want to sound mean to Godsent, but the teams that they've been playing against have been, you know, messing up really. It's the CLG game. CLG played much worse than they did before. I don't even want to talk about Mousesports and their performance on Mirage. So yes, I've been positively surprised by Godsent. They've showed more than I expected. From then, some really good individual performances, great adaptation and mobility on the CT side, and also on the T side you could see what Pronex brings, in a sense that those mid-round calls, when it's 4v4 rounds, 4v3 and so on, they move around the map super well.
Well, that's one semi-final. On the other side of the bracket, we're going to see arguably maybe the bigger semi-final, although not for the crowd here, of course. That's Na'Vi versus EnVy. A while ago it would have been billed as a very close match. Now it's kind of looking like Na'Vi are coming in as pretty heavy favourites, although EnVy, they're kind of making a push now.
I mean, considering this whole tournament, these games are pretty hard to predict beforehand. I mean, looking at EnVyUs' recent form up until this tournament, you would say it's going to be a walk in the park for Na'Vi, right? But we saw during this tournament that Apex, today Kenny especially, had amazing games, and when Kenny has a game like the one on Mirage today, it's a problem for any team to deal with it. It comes down to him just making crazy plays and maybe getting you know, kills where he isn't even supposed to, right? So if they can repeat that performance, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. But I feel that in the end, the structure that Na'Vi has and just, you know, the system they have in place is, combined with their individual performance, they will be able in the end to overcome EnVy tomorrow.
And throwing in like a hypothetical in there, I suppose, as well. Say that Na'Vi, you know, they didn't play with Guardian, Guardian doesn't come back, and they do have to play with Starix. Would you still have them as the favourites to take that game, or do you think Guardian still, despite his injury, is a big enough presence to kind of be the overwhelming force in the team?
The worst thing is I would probably still stick with Na'Vi, because I expected a lot less from Starix individually. He performed super well in those two. Okay, in the train game, the first game he was really good against Godsend, and then in the CLG game I feel that he did his part, right? In that game it was Seized who took matters into his own hands, so to speak. When it was crunch time, he was the one going for aggressive picks and getting the high impact frags and winning the rounds for his team. That's the thing, when you have such a solid system in place, you don't need, so to speak, an amazing performance from your individual players. That's just an added bonus. So I think it would have been probably more interesting. The EnVyUs players would have had a better chance, but yeah, I think I would still go probably with Na'Vi.
Are you calling Na'Vi for the whole tournament? Do you think if they can go past EnVyUs and most likely face up against NiP? Can you give the Swedish fans some hope to NiP?
Of course, I think that NiP is, their results are not showing it because they didn't play in as many tournaments, and at the major they had to play with Threat. They did well enough, managed to regain their legend status. In Katowice, a bit unlucky, didn't make it past the group stage, but if you look at if you just look at their play and not results, it's clear that they've improved much, and it's really hard to bet against NIP on home soil, you know. But Na'Vi still is the better team. So if that is the final, Na'Vi NIP, I just expect a really close game and a really exciting game, and I would still have to go with Na'Vi in a sense that I feel that also the map pool benefits them. Yes, NIP plays all of the maps, but Na'Vi pretty much plays them as well, and I just feel that they're on some of the maps that are probably going to be played, they're probably still have a slight edge, but wouldn't count NIP out at all. Wouldn't be surprised if they managed to overcome them.
Okay, and we'll start to wrap things up, I guess. People say, when they talk about Threat, they say he kind of reset NIP, if you will. A lot of the players are saying we pretty much started from scratch when Threat came in. What do you think is the skill ceiling now for this NIP, the one with Pit playing as well? Do you think they can kind of regain their form of being one of the best teams in the world, or based on the players they have, if they can get their kind of tactical game correct?
I definitely think that they can compete with the best teams in the world. The couple of issues that maybe I see with this lineup, if you're talking about competing with Fnatic, Na'Vi, LG and so on, is at times, you know, how good can Forrest be with the op. He has some games where it's pretty good, he can compete with anyone. Some games he's a bit off. But thinking about it, I mean, the players are gaining confidence and already having a wide map pool. I see no reason why they wouldn't be able to be a contender at most of the tournaments. At least maybe a problem is going to come once, you know, people start getting used to them, and then them having to switch things up again to reinvent themselves in a sense.